Maryland Life Sciences would like to recognize today's title sponsor, Horizon. Horizon is a global biotechnology company focused on the discovery, development, and commercialization of medicines that address critical needs for people impacted by rare autoimmune and severe inflammatory diseases. We apply scientific expertise and courage to bring clinically meaningful therapies to patients. Learn more at horizontherapeutics.com. We'd like to thank Horizon for its continued support of the Maryland Life Sciences Bioinnovation Conference.
At the beginning of everything in Horizon R&D is doing our best scientific assessment of what places we're going to be able to potentially have a meaningful impact on human disease.
Not only do we try and look and discover new molecules, but once you get something and it's proven to be safe and effective, you want to look where else you can utilize it. It's about the patient understanding their disease, their pathobiology, and identifying the right pathways. You can see the opportunities to develop medicines that would best address the fundamental origins of disease, perhaps not just in one autoimmune disease, but perhaps in many.
That patient is always part of the conversation within R&D. That's what really differentiates our approach, in that there's a patient that we are aiming to serve at the end of the journey.
Welcome to the 2022 Maryland Life Sciences Bioinnovation Conference. Please.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm Dave Anderson. I'm the head of quality for Kite at their Frederick facility. Unfortunately, Naren Kadaba couldn't make it today. He's out sick, but I'll be filling in for him. And I'm joined by Brian, Kenty, and Trushar Agrawal, who are leading functions for our facility there. And I got to admit, these videos are kind of a double-edged sword. They're great to have. They really help us connect, but they are really hard to follow. So bear with us here. They're amazing. And we actually got to meet Lori. She came to our facility. She told us her story. That's how that video got made. And it's really powerful to have her walk around the facility and talk to floor-level technicians, et cetera, and say thank you. So that's really kind of what Kite is all about, is connecting that patient and making a real big impact on them. So thank you, Lori, for that. And we'll get started today. So before we start the discussion, I'll let you know a little bit about what Kite does and what cell therapy manufacturing is, for those that are not familiar. So Kite harnesses an individual's own immune system by reprogramming it with a viral vector, and we give that back to the patient. So we actually take stuff from the patient and then we give it back to them. Our biomanufacturing process is highly individualized from the point of enrollment for that patient until we prepare that individualized collection kit all the way to the patient, and their cells arrive at our facility and run through our manufacturing process, and we return it to them. So with that, Trushar, let's get started with you. Can you first introduce yourself, and then from your point of view, can you reflect on the patient-first mindset and how it influences our overall biomanufacturing process?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Good morning, everyone. I'm Trushar Agrawal. I am the head of manufacturing for Kite Pharmaceuticals for the Frederick, Maryland site. I've been with Kite for a little over 3 years now. And the facility we have in Frederick, it was farmland a few years ago. And fast forward 3 years, we have 400 people working at this site as of now. The site received FDA approval to make our flagship product, Yescarta, in April 2022. And for last 5 months, we have been commercially making the product for patients like Lori, the video just you saw. Why the patient focus that you're talking about, David? When you see patients like Lori and our team of 400 people when we are manufacturing product, this is not just any lot, right? Every lot is a patient, and every patient has a story. So it's really important when we are manufacturing this product that we keep that in mind. And once the apheresis arrive to our site, we do not screen any patient. So depending on how sick the patients are, some of these patients They have failed the first line and second line therapy, and that's why they're coming to us. And sometimes they don't have many days to live. So the agility is very important. Our manufacturing process time, the median is about 16 days for US, and it's about 19 days for Europe. So when your raw material is varying, it could create some issues in manufacturing sometime. So whenever we have issues, we come together. We understand at the end of the day, our role is to get the product out. We need to meet the product spec. We need to meet all our internal quality requirements. But at the same time, we need to make sure that patient can receive the drug in a very timely fashion. So Brian, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think regarding the end of the process where we're looking to disposition the batch, by nature of the material, there's always that patient variability. So where possible in my role, we're kind of the tie with our process development function. So we're able to leverage the extensive data set that we have on the process characterization that was ultimately utilized to establish our control strategy and gives us confidence that the material that we release out the door is meeting all product quality and patient safety requirements.
So it's interesting, Trushar. I heard you mention there time and speed a couple times. So not just the speed with which the site came online, but then each batch that we make, the time that we have to focus on to make sure that happens quickly. And that echoes with me being in the quality function, that as soon as you harvest a batch, my QA and QC functions are on the clock, making sure that we are meeting those deadlines to make sure we get that batch back to the patient as quickly as possible. And tying into the material review board process that leverages the data that Brian was talking about, we're looking at all the options that we have out there to make sure that we're getting this high quality material back to the patient as quickly as possible. So time is definitely an element in our biomanufacturing process.
And also to comment on that, because of the time sensitivity, a lot of times will be if there's a deviation or unexpected event that occurs, during a batch execution, we're still able to release that lot back to the patient after we've gone through a robust assessment in terms of the product impact assessment. So at that stage, that's the gating activity in which we're able to leverage that data set that I referred to earlier to give us confidence that that material is meeting all of our critical quality attributes and is ready to go back to the clinic for infusion.
So Brian, I know we skipped your intro, so if maybe you could self-intro and then maybe comment on some of the more tactical aspects that impact our process and how they have a direct correlation to the patient.
Sure. So morning, everyone. My name is Brian Kenty. I've been with Kite just over 3 years now, so similar to Trushar, been able to see the facility go from a field, to an actual building. We spent time, working in construction trailers, and it's really been an honor to be part of this overall experience, to be part of the facility startup, and also getting approval for commercial production at the site. So I'm currently leading as an interim role the manufacturing science and technology group here at the site, and we're primarily focused on direct manufacturing support. So we have a whole team that's dedicated to frontline real-time support as we're executing batches within the manufacturing area. We're operating 7 days a week, so as soon as patient material comes in the door, we're initiating that manufacturing process, and we have to have people available to make sure that there's any type of escalations that occur, that we have a quick response time. So typically our team, we're responding to those escalations a lot of times on average in less than 5 minutes, especially if it's a time-sensitive step of the process. We really need to make sure that we're not holding things up and that we're able to identify a path forward to continue forward processing while also keeping product quality in mind. We also have the luxury of MS&T laboratory on site, so that's a non-GMP space, which gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to quickly go into that space and generate data for a number of different applications, spanning from maybe a real-time question that we need to generate some additional data within the lab to be able to support the data package that's being used to release a lot, to also looking at opportunities for continuous process improvements and really kind of use a data-driven decision to determine what's the highest priority for us to be able to go into that space and generate the required data to be able to support, maybe it's a regulatory update or a data package that'll be used to drive a process change and overall streamline the manufacturing process with the end goal, being a more, I say streamlined process to be able to get the material from, the patient arrival until release and back to the clinic. There's also another focus area that we've invested quite a bit of resources in on the data management and trending. So at our site, we're executing all of our process steps through electronic batch records. So there's a wealth of information available that we're trying to automate access and visibility to that data. So we're not looking back at that retrospectively, but we're able to actually be proactive and monitor the progress of a given batch and intervene to be able to avoid any types of, if we start to see a shift in process performance, be able to step in and give that lot the best chance to be able to make it to the final formulation step of the process. So we're just now rolling out those capabilities here at the site. And then Kite as a whole, we're really the industry leaders and are leveraging partnerships with other companies to be able to further drive innovation and technology to make advances in the process. So even the version of the process of Yescarta that's being executed at the site right now, it's a next generation version, which there's certain design elements that are moving towards more automated process steps, closing the process to be able to take out any type of manual manipulations. And as we continue to develop and build on that technology, we're going to be moving, I think, more in that direction to be, really at a more fully automated process where, once the material hits the site, we rely on that automation technology to drive robustness and process consistency as tools of the future. And we're really at the forefront of being able to demonstrate that here at our local site in Frederick, Maryland, but also being able to deploy that out after piloting that technology to our other manufacturing sites within the network.
Great, thanks, Brian. I know personally I love the data that MSAT generates both reactively and prospectively. It makes making decisions on lots very much easier and faster. So again, back to time, quality is not stuck waiting for more and more data to try to make these decisions. Trushar, maybe I'll have you build on what Brian had said in there. He talked about continuous improvement and some of the stuff they're doing there. So when their non-GMP lab does these continuous improvement things, what does that do for you in manufacturing?
Yeah, it makes our life on the manufacturing floor a lot easier because you know that we have a very strong characterization data, and if something goes wrong, if we do not meet CQA or we're out of spec, at that point you have good data that you can rely on. And when the lot they go to material review board, it makes it easier even for quality to make a sound decision, because at that point you have data that you can rely on and leverage to release your lot.
And maybe you can comment on when something goes wrong on the floor, what's the environment like?
Yeah, it's a tough environment, right? Because everyone kind of knows that there is a patient associated with that. There is someone waiting there. And while you can never operate with that kind of a mindset because it makes you nervous, but it's always, even in my mind, right, if there is something wrong, how do we get together? But what I see on the floor, that if there is something wrong with a lot, manufacturing will quickly call quality. They will quickly call all the support functions like, MSNT. They will call MTS function. They are providing support on the floor. So just the whole team, that they come together and they just have one goal. They want to make sure, how do we process this batch forward and get the therapy out?
Yeah, I love that cross-functional aspect, and I'll leverage a quote from our previous colleagues of boundaryless execution, that it's great to have that patient focus. When something goes wrong, everyone just gets together and figures out how to move it forward as quickly as possible because they know that someone's waiting for that material. It's not just going to sit on the shelf.
Yep.
So with that, Trushar, we talk about right first time. What does that mean for a cell therapy manufacturing process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when you look at the Yescarta product that we are making, it's an individualized treatment. So when you compare cell therapy, autologous cell therapy with your traditional biopharma operation, so if you have a drug substance batch, if something goes wrong with the batch, you can take a financial loss, you can make a new batch. Same thing with drug product, you have a long expiration, and you can produce more to avoid any kind of supply chain issues with your product. But in cell therapy, you really don't have that luxury because the patient cells that we receive, there are a few hundred mils sometime, and we do not have multiple attempts to make this product. So it is very, very important that we have a flawless execution, and we have data if something goes wrong to support that. But very, very different, as I said, compared to traditional biopharmaceuticals, where you can, sit on your inventory in a shelf. And here, you just need to come together and make sure you get the product out the door, but you do not have multiple attempts.
Yeah, and I think to comment further on that, taking into account the criticality of being able to deliver right first time, the process design elements that have been built in to mitigate the risk if we do run into an unforeseen circumstance. For example, if we happen to have excess material when we first start processing and receive that material from the patient, part of the process design is to be able to take some of that excess material that doesn't get forward processed immediately, and it's frozen down as a backup, which is kind of our first mitigation in the event that an issue is encountered with the primary fresh material. And then throughout the process, each critical operation, we've put a lot of resources kind of in collaboration with our PD team and our validation team to be able to map out a recovery or reprocessing type of scenario that's fully validated. So when we went into our process validation campaign, that was part of our overall strategy to not only demonstrate our ability to deliver and release product that makes spec when everything goes right, but also map out, how do we respond and proceduralize in advance, some steps that we could follow that would give us the best chance. Maybe there's an equipment malfunction, for example, being able to extract that material out of the equipment and then continue forward processing in a compliant manner. So that's certainly one focus area to give us a better chance of success. And then at the end of the process, again, if we've got cells are growing well, we have a high percent transduction rate. A lot of times, for most of our batches, we do have excess material that we're able to formulate a second final product bag, which gives us another chance in the event that there's an issue with the primary material. And then, so really, yeah, I think overall, that comprehensive approach is really a way that we've been able to maintain a very high success rate in terms of delivery from the first time that we receive patient apheresis to be able to ultimately deliver their product back at the infusion site, which I think we're around about 96% delivery, which is, I think, leading the industry.
I'll comment on the off-the-shelf comment, building on Trushar, what you were saying. I'm reflecting now on kind of some of the data that we generate, be it MSAT or in the PD space, and it's intriguing how patient-driven it is. I'm thinking about like stability, where in a traditional biopharma space, you'll create 3, 4, 5 years of stability, and you're always kind of up against that because it's sitting on the shelf, it's waiting. We still do stability, but usually we never talk about it because it's way more stable than the patient needs it to be. The patient needs it within days, not months or years. So it's intriguing to me how much the patient need really drives even what we're doing in development and the data that we're creating. So,
and even when it comes to things like deviations, so in a traditional biopharma, you will be working on your deviation, you will be closing them out all the way, but here, in cell therapy, the goal is to perform the impact assessments, and then get the product out as soon as possible. So that way we do not keep our patients waiting for a long time. Even in the manufacturing process, there is not a lot of inefficiencies that we can allow just because the end-to-end time, it's very less. And in some cases, some of these patients that don't have enough time, we had instances where we receive the product, and by the time we manufacture, patients were not there just because they didn't have enough days to live. So it's very, very critical that we get the product out, a quality product, but in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and I think a particular challenge associated with startup of a new facility, there's new equipment, a lot of new manufacturing staff, bringing in, on the order of hundreds of staff that are directly on the floor, handling the patient cells, responsible for executing all those process steps. The criticality of making sure there's a robust training program to be able to have confidence that those staff members are, have all of the skills that they're going to be expected to demonstrate during execution of GMP batches, and taking the time to dedicate up front to make sure that your training strategy is robust so that when they are released, they're able to maintain that high level of the success rate at the site.
Yeah, it's a great comment, Brian. It's intriguing to kind of think back on going from that green field that you guys talked about to the facility that we are now, and it's great to be putting patient lots out the door. So Kite's Frederick facility has now joined the 3 commercial manufacturing facilities in the network that, again, are all patient-focused. It's really exciting to have patients come to the site and see what we do there. And it's now great that we have, I'll say, soup to nuts, from viral vector manufacturing all the way through finished product going out the door, and PD development right there with us. It's great to have all of that within our network so that we can have control over it and really focus in on the patients. So,
and there is an increased awareness of this product, Yescarta. And even if we have 3 manufacturing sites now, there is a growing demand for this product. And it's very critical that, it's a personalized treatment, but we can scale up in a way that we can support thousands of patients, because at this time we are looking at treating thousands of patients every year.
Yeah, and even selection of the site location, part of that was driven by proximity to major airports. So that's a critical piece of the overall supply chain to be able to mitigate, maybe there's a weather event or, a flight was canceled. That's all, overall, not just the manufacturing process, but the front end to be able to receive that material in a timely manner, as well as being able to get that material back to the patient. That supply chain logistic, can be quite complex at times.
it truly is a patient journey. So with that, I believe we've got plenty of time for questions. There's a mic up here, I believe, in the room for anybody who may have questions.
If you don't ask questions, we ask questions.
Good morning. So thank you for your time today. So my question has to do with the culture that you've developed in recruitment. So clearly you're very mission-oriented, you're very patient-focused, based on the nature of what you make. And I think to a great extent biotechnology companies, life science companies tend to be very mission-driven. But when you're recruiting, when you're bringing in new employees, new workforce, how does that play into the recruitment process? And how powerful can that message be?
Yeah, and it's a great question. So we have hired, as I said, about 400 people over the last 2.5 years at this site. And it is very challenging when you are trying to recruit from Maryland area, where there are so many biotech companies and all these companies that are competing for the same talent. But our mantra, when we work with our talent acquisition is bring your attitude, right? And we will teach you how to run cell therapy. So even, if you have, we always need some, experience, some background to perform certain roles. But if you have the patient mindset, if you are ready to serve the patients and you are willing to get your hands dirty, I think Kite is the place to work. And once we call them cell therapy specialists, they work on the cells, and when they join the company, they go through rigorous training. So we have a good 2 to 3 months training program, depending on what they are going to do. And the same thing in a quality organization, they go through the same type of training before they are deployed to the floor.
And perhaps building on that, recruitment is one element, but there's also ongoing culture, and that's where we have to be very careful when we toe the line to not create a pressure cooker where people feel like if I screw something up, someone's literally going to die. And that's where we're very careful with that culture to kind of toe that line and make sure that people understand this is very important, but it is still manufacturing, and we are still manufacturing. And to Trushar's point, we try to make sure that they feel as comfortable as they can with a very rigorous training program to make sure that they're capable of executing what we are asking them to do.
Yeah, I think just to comment on, I think being at the site, there's a palpable energy that you can feel, which, I think is primarily driven, again, with that patient mindset, understanding, the impact that we're making on individuals' lives. But beyond that, I think there's been certain elements that, we've tried to incorporate in as we've grown to be able to maintain the culture at the site. One, certainly diversity and inclusion. We have a variety of backgrounds, and we really try to, leverage those strengths and different experiences from individuals and give them an opportunity to be able to communicate those ideas. And certainly a continuous improvement mindset as well, which I think is especially relevant during the startup of a new facility. I think people truly have a voice at any level within the organization. A lot of times the best ideas are coming from the people that are directly on the floor, responsible for executing the process. They have insight into our pain points and oftentimes have a lot of great ideas, which, if there's a communication channel there for them to escalate those types of ideas, then that's where our functions can come in and actually support them and help drive towards implementation.
Good morning. Oh, you're tall. So I love everything I'm hearing. One of my passions, my big passion currently is training. And I love that you're talking about the why, because I've seen in industry too many times we forget to tell them why. All these crazy things we make them do are so important. But when you talk about the robust training program, how long does it typically take you guys to bring someone in and get them ready to turn loose, if you will? And what are the key, we talked about, they won't know specifically the process, and they shouldn't, because they wouldn't be with you before. But what key process steps do you find very helpful for recruits that you're trying to find?
Yeah, so unfortunately, you're going to get the traditional quality answer of it depends. But I think it's better to kind of describe it as there's a high variability in terms of the type of person that you're bringing in and the type of role that you're bringing them in for. Some will come with some experience, some will come with zero experience. And maybe I'll turn to Trushar, because I think he's got the biggest organization that really has the highest variability in terms of skill sets and roles that you're filling.
Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, traditionally it takes about 2 to 3 months just for the training. But just by completing training, you are not truly proficient at what you need to do. So what we do, that we make sure once they complete the training, they have enough time with senior operators, senior cell therapy specialists on the floor, and they watch the process, and they only touch the patient cells when they're truly comfortable. We have OJTs, we call them on-the-job training, and we make sure that first they have to learn, they have to see somebody do it, and then they have to demonstrate, and somebody will qualify them. So there is a rigorous training program, but to have somebody on the floor working with the cells, I would say it takes about 6 to 8 months.
And Brian, maybe you can comment on how we've leveraged the MSAT lab to accomplish some of that training and comfort level that they have.
Yeah, we've used that space for a variety of different functions, but primarily the manufacturing team as well as our own team members. So a lot of times it's difficult to find people with extensive cell therapy experience because of, it's an emerging industry. So we've been able to use that lab space kind of in a low-risk environment to give folks an opportunity to get hands-on experience with the process without having that pressure of being associated with a patient batch. So we spent a lot of time and efforts on that within the laboratory space to be able to dedicate that time, especially as we were initially transitioning to our commercial production start, to be able to buy down the risk and increase that comfort level before people were actually going out onto the floor to execute GMP batches.
Trushar, maybe you can comment on how we've flexed in our facility as well to create more opportunities for training.
Yes, so we have when we started building this facility, we did not have enough space. So we worked with Hood College in the past, and they were really nice with us, and they allowed us to use their facility for training. And now we have a training program set up with the Montgomery College, with Hood College, and Frederick Community College, where we are helping them develop a curriculum around cell therapy. So the new graduates, they can learn about cell therapy, and then when they are ready to apply for the job, they at least have some of the experience with biosafety cabinets or just general cell therapy.
And then we've also taken some space on site to allow them to operate the end-to-end function. So they're actually using the real equipment with the real electronic batch records, with everything, so they can do it and practice it as many times as they need to get comfortable. So that from my perspective, is the ultimate. Let them do it real, and before you ask them to do it with an actual patient. I think we may have time for one more question if there's anything out there.
I'm asking my own team a question, but I'm curious. So we saw Lori's video, and we play patient videos at our meetings, and we have patients come and speak. So reflecting on her story, or maybe some of the other patient stories that you've heard, what is one thing you're reminded of when you hear patients talk about their cancer journey and kind of how CAR-T had an impact?
Well, I guess I'll reflect first. And I don't know that I have a video to reflect on, but I'll reflect on a very recent experience. For those of you, hopefully in the room here, are East Coast based. Hopefully you didn't have to travel too far, but we recently had a hurricane come through, and just last week we were on the phone with a doctor talking about them trying to admit their patient ahead of the hurricane, and was there anything that we could do to get the material to them faster? That's it. Like it doesn't get more real than that of impacting someone's life. So
yeah, I think for me, what can be quite emotional is, when you see videos with people sharing, especially with young kids. I have 2 young children at home, and I kind of put myself in that scenario, thinking through what that would really mean. And it's hard because, I think, you do make a lot of sacrifices in terms of being able to, start up the facility and maintain production. And a lot of times, there's long hours and you make some family sacrifices. But, when you keep that in your mind that, you're ultimately helping people in that situation, it's certainly motivating and helps keep things in perspective.
Yeah, I would say, when you see this type of patient videos and you go back to your facility and you see that you need to manufacture all these lots, and then right, these lots are real patients, and you have this responsibility of treating this many patients. So you can get into the daily grind, and forget about some of this sometime, but when you see this type of videos, it just, hits home, right? That you are in the business of curing cancer. So that's what drives me every day.
And with that, we're out of time, so we'll wrap up, and thank you all for your engagement.
Okay.